Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we are talking all things CrossFit Open. At the time of recording, it's Friday of 22.3, but by the time you hear this, will probably be a week post Open. Had some time for the dust to settle, for everyone to reflect on what the last 3 weeks have been like. And we're going to talk all about what actually is the Open, what purpose does it serve, like what are the different use cases for people in the Open, what's good about it, what's bad about it, and what are our personal opinions about it. But before we get into it, a big thank you to our show sponsors, the Training Stimulus. Please register interest at thetrainingstimulus.com if you'd like to learn more about movement mechanics. Wit Fitness, please use our discount code LL15 at wit-fitness.com to get 15% off your purchase. And Hytro, our blood flow restriction partner, please use discount code LL20 to get 20% off your purchase. Rob,
Yes,
CrossFit Open, what do you think about it?
I really like it. I really do. I think it's an awesome time in the CrossFit calendar where it brings everyone together, and that's kind of one of the biggest sells of CrossFit is the community aspect of it, and how we all work to that same intensity, which some people in different classes, in the classes might be like, oh, I'm not going to work as hard. But when it does come around to the Open, they normally find a little bit extra because they see everyone pushing their physical hardest. And it's really hard to sit back when you see everyone else working really hard. So I find it's a really cool time of year. What about yourself?
I agree. I love it. I think even though I'm not doing it and I haven't done it for the last year or two, I think it's a really special time of year. It's the pinnacle of the season for most people, and that energy, that buzz you get in the gym when people are doing the open workouts is really something special. And I think there's something really bonding about seeing people share suffering, even if I'm on the sidelines, just judging and watching and supporting. But yeah, there's loads of stuff I love about it. And I guess what's your thinking on why you're not doing it this year? I'm curious to hear that.
Just because my goal, so I was going to do it. I was actually going to sign up, and even though I've done absolutely no CrossFit or anything like that, which for the first two workouts, I would have been sweet. And even for the third one, I can do all these movements. They just wouldn't have been efficient, and my muscles and joints and ligaments and tendons, everything just wouldn't have been prepped for bar muscle ups, chest to bar pull ups, and I would have definitely hurt myself. And because I'm competing in 6 weeks' time in a powerlifting competition, it wouldn't have been conducive to my goal, shall we say. But that's the only reason, because I was literally went to the payment screen and I was just like, I just don't think I should do this. And it was just, there was a gut feeling. I was like, and then thankfully, obviously I decided to then build a new gym and stuff like that. That took all my time, and I haven't trained for 4 weeks. So there you go. So it's been, that's again not been conducive to prepping for a powerlifting competition. So I like to do things a little off. How comes you don't? I know obviously we've both obviously done them over the years, but why didn't you do this year's?
Similar sort of thing in that I don't do competitive CrossFit in my own training. I don't do a full CrossFit training program for myself. Like, my goals lie outside of that. And while I like throwing down with people and having a fun workout together for the bonding side of things and for the enjoyment side of things, posting a great score is not high on my priority list in terms of my personal training and fitness goals. I get my competitive fix from other sports sort of outside the gym. And in terms of progressive overload, like you were saying there, it would be a very sudden system shock for me to throw in these movements that I haven't been building up over the last year.
Yeah.
And I know myself that because I am competitive, I wouldn't be able to do them sensibly.
Yeah,
I would have to empty the tank. I would have to push myself to my limit. And doing that in movements that I haven't earned the right to is a recipe for disaster. And like 22.2 would have been a classic example of, I would have written myself off for a few days after that workout. I would have sacrificed progressing the training that I have been doing over the
yeah,
last year. I would have had a sore back and had to play a squash match with, and net overall just definitely isn't worth it. But
yeah.
I have been down to support people and
Kind of,
participate from
just
judging
from
and
the
from a
sides,
spectator.
soaking up from the
Yeah.
outside. And that's great. And I think that's for those, anyone that doesn't know what 22.2 or what 22.2 was, it was basically like 100 deadlifts and 100 bar facing burpees, going from 1 all the way to 10 and back down to 1. So pretty brutal for anyone, even that has been training, because at the end of the day, 100 deadlifts within 10 minutes potentially is a lot of work in a short amount of time. But just kind of, on the positive side of things, I think one of the things that I've really loved about the Open is when you can't sit on the outline. So where I said there how it makes everyone work hard is because normally you're judging a partner. So you're both working as hard. So like you do the workout and then you judge the person that judged you. So then that person can't just sit back and go, oh, I'm going to just sit here, because you're going to be, come on, let's go. You're getting all that like motivation to work. As you said there, it's going to be really hard to not empty the tank. So it's like, it's great. But obviously you're going with the plan, as we discussed in the previous episode, and you have a strategy. But then it does get to the point where, you've got everyone shouting at you and stuff like that, and you're working as hard as you can. So I think this Open's been really interesting. I mean, for those that don't know, the first 2 workouts were quite accessible to everyone, which I thought was great. Being the CrossFit Open, and I guess where there's new like leaders at the top, the new owner and stuff like that, they obviously want to really push CrossFit and the growth of it. So having the first 2 workouts being really accessible, like the first workout being 3 wall walks, 12 dumbbell snatches and 15 box jump overs. And the second workout, as I said there, the deadlifts and the bar facing burpees, even though they're like tough workouts, they're accessible because you can.
There's no movements that people can't really do.
No, exactly. And then what I love is then 22.3 being the one that was released today, being a lot more high skill gymnastics and so like pull-ups, chest to bar pull-ups, bar muscle ups, ascending weight thrusters and double unders. All high skill movements, and then you're doing your heaviest thrusters under massive fatigue if you get there. I think that's great. I think you've brought the community in with the first 2 workouts, and then you've got that last one. We say, right, boom, there you go. Now try to do this one. It's like, whoa! And then I think this is there where a lot of people's egos are going to be, I'm RX in this Open. Yeah. And then, oh, no, I can't RX this one. And they're doing ring rows. And it's like, that's fine, because you're still going to get the same stimulus as you did from the first 2, because your skill isn't as high as it potentially can be to get a good workout. But people are going to do 21 pull-ups, 42 double unders, probably get to the thrusters and then try and do the chest to bars and be like, and just get there. And then if they get to the bar muscle ups, it'll be like where they get their first muscle up, which I know we're going to touch on probably a little bit later.
Yeah.
So, we've discussed before as well, we like that first muscle up.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there, in that the first 2 workouts are very accessible. The third one is less accessible with higher skill movements. And that naturally leads to the question of like, well, what should be the blend? Like what is the Open for in the first place? Like, why does it exist? And I think it's quite confusing to people who haven't been in CrossFit for a long time, because it has evolved over time.
Yeah.
And it represents really different things to different people. So a very abbreviated history of the Open. It's the global competition that anyone who does CrossFit can get involved with. There's an RX, a standard version, and a scaled version, which is a little bit easier for beginners. And initially, it was just, how do you rank against everyone else in the world who does CrossFit? How good are you at the sport of CrossFit? It also has served as a qualifier to regionals and also directly to the games at a point in time. If you were first in your country, that would qualify you directly to go to the games, rather than having to win or place highly in a sanctional to get your ticket another way. And now the system for the last 2 Opens has been as a qualifier for the quarterfinals. The top 10% in each division go through to the quarterfinals to then earn a place at the semifinals to then qualify for the games. So from a CrossFit sport perspective, that's the purpose that it serves, is to try and decide who is fittest, to then ultimately decide who's the fittest in the world, male and female, in various different categories. However, it also serves the purpose of bringing the community together and having great weekends at the box where everyone gets stuck in, has that shared suffering, puts their hard work to the test to see how their CrossFit fitness has developed. And I think there's a bit of conflict there, because if you're trying to tease out the best from the rest, but you're also trying to do something that is very inclusive for everyone to get involved in, it is very challenging to program accordingly. And that's what causes a lot of disgruntlement, I'd say, about what the workouts are, and people saying, like, there's a lot of CrossFit badgers who were complaining that the first two workouts didn't have enough skill in, because in their opinion, we should be testing the sport of CrossFit. And I guess they felt under rewarded for the fact that they'd been diligent with their CrossFit training. They'd learned all the movements. They were very proficient at barbell cycling, at high skill gymnastics, and they didn't get a chance to show it off. And more crucially, they didn't get a chance to use that to jump people on the leaderboard who maybe were fit but less skilled. And it's to your point earlier about being very inclusive for the first two workouts, where you get people who perhaps don't do so much CrossFit specific fitness, but are very fit in other ways. They were able to score really well in the first two workouts because there wasn't such a CrossFit heavy bias. Whereas week 3, now we've got the kipping movements, now we've got double unders, and muscle ups obviously comes under kipping. But unless you've specifically learnt those movements, even if you're very fit and strong, you're probably not going to score very well in that workout. So it really does favor those with a lot of CrossFit experience. And in terms of like what's the right balance of rewarding CrossFit experience versus being inclusive, it's totally opinion. It's not something that's objective. CrossFit hasn't set out their stall to say we're striking this exact balance. But my opinion on it is that they've balanced it quite well now, in that you have two workouts that everyone can get involved in, and the third one's that little teaser to say, look, you did really well in 1 and 2, but you're not doing so well in 3. Maybe this is your incentive to do a little bit more CrossFit, to come into one of our affiliates a little bit more regularly. And you can't really say fairer than that, to be honest. They're putting on the big event for you, so pay the man.
I literally, they were my words. I loved it's the point. I think having the fact that it used to be 5 workouts, used to trash everyone's training, and it took too long. Whereas these 3 workouts have been great because, as you say, like those first 2, it's a shame there wasn't an opportunity to get something heavy in, because that then at least gives someone, like, the people can be a little bit more, okay, at least I can get...
Is that because you're strong, Rob?
It is, because that's exactly right. But, you know, for me, 100 kilo deadlifts would have been, well, I don't know at the moment, but yeah, they would have been sweet. But the thing is, I think exactly what you said there, those first 2 workouts being accessible, being relatively heavy with the 100 kilo barbell, you know, that's great. And then getting into that third workout, which is basically a sort your shit out if you want to get good at CrossFit and if you want to do more. And I think the reason why I like this setup is because when we talk about trying to be either working on just your overall fitness or taking you to the quarterfinals, I think this is a really nice way to do it. And I reckon most people that were complaining probably weren't the people that are going to be at the quarters and stuff like that, because they're not even thinking about the Open. They're thinking, right, this is just a workout that I need to do well in to get me to the next stage where the CrossFit properly starts. And all the people that aren't going to get to the quarters are like, oh, I want to be better than like Tom over there doing, you know, because that's who they're competing against. And when you're going against just straight fitness, it's a big like magnifying glass on, okay, you can't just use skill to be better than someone. Like CrossFit is part of it, is how fit are you? And that would be this wouldn't have been a great Open for me, but maybe I could do 22.3 would have been sweet for me. I would have been happy with this one. Like if I would have still been doing CrossFit. The first 2, like 22.2 would have been okay, but the first one would have been terrible for me. Like just that kind of work for 15 minutes. Just it's not my area. It's never been my area of speciality. And like I think where there's no strength stuff, I wouldn't have been able to take that little and get ahead of everyone else. So I would have been one of those people like, oh, for fuck's sake, why is there no? Because it wasn't favouring my biases. And this is the thing. And I think when CrossFit are trying to give you just enough to make you decide whether you want to do this competitively to get you, say, to the quarterfinals, or if you just want to be doing a good workout. I think they've done really well.
Exactly. And you touched on a point there. Most people, if they're complaining about the programming, is because it doesn't favor their strengths. That's what it boils down
Yeah.
to. And my mate Josh made a good point the other day about the CrossFit Pyramid, where it has the order of importance.
Yeah.
And basically, the base of the pyramid is nutrition. And then I think it's metabolic conditioning or conditioning of some
Yeah.
sort. And that is the foundation. So unless you have that in check, you shouldn't be thinking about the gymnastics, the strength, the weightlifting, the high skill stuff, because you're not even conditioned enough to deserve that. And I think it doesn't play to my strengths either. Like a workout like 22.1 wouldn't favor me because that's not where I put my time and energy. But CrossFit have been clear in their media to say those are our priorities, and
Yeah.
that's what we think should precede the high skill stuff. So I don't think many proper CrossFit diehards have great grounds for contesting pure fitness tests like that.
No, and I think like Josh put it right there. When you talk about the pyramid and having metabolic condition as the second one, then the one after that is gymnastics, and then weightlifting, and then sport. So then you look at like the open itself. First one is a metcon, metabolic condition. That is what that is. It's doing your movements at a high intensity over and over and over again, and how much can you sustain. The second one, obviously, being again something similar. It's a metcon. Really, yes, it's a little bit of a heavier metcon, but it's still metcon. And then they've gone into gymnastics. And then the high skill of weightlifting will be in the quarterfinals, because then it will be something like snatches, cleans, like cycling that barbell. And then when you get to the top of the period being sport, that's where you get to the games or like the sanctionals and stuff like that. Like these sort of, this is where you're going to get those odd objects or these different workouts that are fun looking workouts. But everyone wants to be up there in that sport side, doing like the fun ones or the weightlifting, because they've been working on their weightlifting because it's the easier option to do because it's a little less intense, and it's focusing more on the skill. It's like why I love doing weightlifting, because I didn't have to do the metcon. So, but then the metcon was always a nice like finisher. So I think it's, I think they've done very well. And whether, I'd be curious to know if these were Castro's workouts. I reckon he would have put up if they were. So I haven't seen anything. So I reckon they were, and I think they've done really well. I'd say fair play to them.
Sweet. So, yeah, I think just to add a couple of other good points, doubling down on your community spirit point, I think one thing that CrossFit is easy to criticize for is the constant variance of the training, and that conflicts with the principle of progressive overload for going after specific fitness adaptations. However, one of the counter arguments to that is that the community spirit and fun and enjoyment factors actually lead to greater consistency in training, because it keeps people turning up. So doing stuff that is suboptimal from a training, like a optimal training plan, slightly going off plan to keep people engaged, to keep people coming back, and maybe increase the frequency with which they go to the gym, nets out to having better results than a perfect plan that people don't adhere to so consistently. So I think that's one thing that the Open does. I can criticize open workouts for why 22.2 is not a great idea for a lot of people who can't do 100 deadlifts at 100 kilos. However, if somebody really enjoys that, gets the bug, and it keeps them coming back to the gym, there's also mental health benefits from being part of a community, making friends, and that shared hardship thing. I always think about it like if you go on a boozy holiday or whatever, and you wake up hungover, that shared suffering is actually very bonding. And CrossFit's not dissimilar to that. In that if you're all put yourself in the bin and you're rolling around on the floor afterwards, there is something quite bonding about it, because you all share each other's pain. So I think that's another great thing about CrossFit, even if the training itself isn't perfect. The tangential benefits are really not to be ignored.
Yeah, and I think it's key thing there, as you say, I guess it depends on what you're choosing to use the Open for. So I guess like programming wise, it's sweet, right? You know, it's just another workout, and if you treat it like that, and you're actually not that fussed about your score, and you just want a really good workout, and you want the community all behind you, and you're gonna work really hard for 3 workouts of the whole year potentially, but you're gonna work really, really hard. Then that's a really cool 3 weeks, like, you know, and that's an opportunity for you to, you know, see what you're made of. Whether you post a score or not, that's completely down to you. And I think if you are looking at it as a way to, you know, compete in competitive CrossFit, even if you're not going to make it to the quarterfinals, you can still see how high you can get up the leaderboard, and then you go and do a lot more local competitions, you know, like your turf games, your strength in depth, stuff like that. You're doing those like CrossFit-esque, like functional fitness competitions, where essentially these are the type of workouts that will probably come up. Like those 21.12, well, they're the type of things you'd probably see in those competitions. And then 22.3, maybe a bit more towards strength in depth. But, you know, that's what this is. And it's like, again, it puts the, I guess, how you interpret it as how, if it's a good thing or not. And I think it's when you put it on a pedestal, and you're not really going to go beyond, say, the Open, and you're all about, I've got to beat my mate. Then just keep it as that, and understand, cool, okay, who cares what the workout is? If you're trying to be the fittest out of you and your mate, then be the fittest out of you and your mate, no matter what the workout is. And I think, you know, like when we said earlier there about like the bias, it's like, yeah, I said this would not have been a Rob Stubbs Open. This really wouldn't have been, but it would have been a lot of fun to do it. And I would have loved to have got down to like this last workout. And, you know, it's a type of workout which it does separate some. And I remember going into the gym a little while back and still being able to do a bar muscle up, still being able to do double under. So I can still do these skills, probably not efficiently. And as I'm not conditioned for them, so I'd probably hurt myself doing them, but I can still do it. So,
yeah, I think you make a good point there about if you are looking to compete at a local level, another great benefit of doing the Open is that it will highlight what areas of your CrossFit game are strong and weak. So you can see which workouts you do well. And if you didn't do well in the first workout, then it's a very clear signal that your conditioning isn't great. If you're not doing great in 22.3, then you can see exactly where you broke down. Is it because your chest to bar are really inefficient? Is it because you haven't got bar muscle ups yet? It's a great data point to assess how your CrossFit game compares to CrossFit game of your competitors. Because if it is a sport to you, that's what matters. It's not so much as, you know, everyone has their take on what rounded fitness is or the sort of fitness that they want, but that's almost irrelevant. If you care about competing in CrossFit, you've got to abide by their definition of fitness and adjust your strengths and weaknesses to fit their definition as well as you can, rather than say, oh, you know, everybody wants to get better at weightlifting, but if your weightlifting's great, then it's probably not where you should be focusing your time and energy if you want to be a competitive CrossFitter. So looking at your Open scores over the years and seeing where you've ranked in various workouts, spotting the trends of every time there's a workout with toes to bar in, I don't do as well as I do when there's a rowing workout, for example. That's the sort of data you should be crunching if you want to plan your next year efficiently.
Yeah, and I think it's like we often ask guests, like, what is fitness to you? It really is that example. And if you don't see yourself as a competitive CrossFitter, then cool, this is just a fun workout that you can get involved in and hopefully do well in. And what I find interesting is that there was no like rower in this one. So obviously that's most likely come in the quarterfinals, but it really was inaccessible. It just needed a barbell box and a dump. Oh, actually, no, the pull-up bar. Yeah. So, but anyway, okay. There's a lot of stuff, but enough of saying how good this is, because let's get into some of the bad stuff. And I think this first point is kind of a bit of both. And we mentioned about watching people start too fast, because it's kind of good because you can game it and say, right, they fucked that up. So this is how I'm going to beat them. So that's where you're a bit, you know, you're learning from others' mistakes, which is a really positive thing if you do. But at the same time, you're gaming the system. So it's like it's a positive and a negative.
I personally, love watching people start too fast because everyone's been there, right? Everyone who's done a
Yeah.
CrossFit workout has started too fast, and I think I talked about it on a previous episode. I think it's 17.5, the thrusters and double unders one. When I came out the gate super hot, and about 3 or 4 rounds
Yeah.
in, my mate shouts to me, he's like, "Hey, Ash, you're smashing it. You're on track to go to regionals." And I looked at the clock, and I was just like incredibly far above my target pace, and you're living on borrowed time. And I think watching people do that is just
It's so
always
fun.
it's just like watching a ticking time bomb, because you know it's going to hit them like a freight train at some point. You don't know
Yeah.
quite when, and then
Yeah.
there's a switch, and then they go to a snail's pace, and it's great. I think the downside to that is obviously you see people ruin their scores,
Yeah.
and that's not it's not great if somebody cares about what their score
Yeah.
actually is. But I think it's one of those constants that will never change with all the excitement
Yeah.
and all the hype. Especially people without so much experience will get carried away, and of course it feels easy for the first couple of minutes, so you just fly out the gates. But
Yeah.
there is a price to pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
else isn't good about
Well,
CrossFit
I think
Open?
people just constantly bitching and moaning about everything. That's the one thing, like, and again, it's nearly always the people that aren't going to get to the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and going beyond, because they know this is just part of it. Yes, they'd probably say, okay, it would have been cool if there would have been a bit more of a separator, but if you're good, you don't care about what the task is. Just like Matt Fraser's, like, whenever there was a workout, it's not like, oh, this isn't going to be a strong one for me. It's just, I'm going to do as good as I can, and that's going to hopefully get me as good as I can. And same as like looking at Medeiros' score so far as well. He's been doing really well. Like, it's right up there. And the thing is, again, he hasn't necessarily always won the workout. He's doing a Fraser, isn't it? Like, you're just under, or you're winning the odd bit. And again, it's just a workout for him that he has to do really well in and stay in the top 10%, which he knows he will. And all the moaning that goes on, and like, it's funny because I love the anticipation. Like, I used to love all the open chat before. It's like, oh, what do you think the workout's going to be? And then it got a bit boring after 5 weeks. This is why it's quite nice being 3 weeks now. But it's like, there was so much anticipation when you had Castro's clues coming out, stuff like that. Like, it'd be so funny. And people doing all these, like, I used to love reading the comments of like, people was like, this means this means that, it's going to be this. And it just wasn't ever that. But it is the moaning that people are just like, that's what gets to me. Because at the end of the day, it is just a workout. That is what this is.
I think, that's very closely linked to no reps, or like rep dodging and cheating.
Yeah.
There's 2 sides to this. Is one, in that people who do that in classes throughout the year get found out because they've got a judge. So they have to do all the reps and they have to do them to standards. But on the other side of it is that you get some people who don't take it so seriously and maybe don't hit the movement standards properly, but will then go on about their scores. And that winds a lot of people up because they hate being beaten by people who haven't adhered to the movement standards strictly. And that's just an ugly side of, I think, all sports, is that people have different levels of what's the word, just strictness, self-imposed strictness.
It's like pushing the boundaries of what's right and wrong. It's like the blurred line in it. It's like, how close can I get to, like, it's like when say in a powerlifting competition and I need to shorten my squat. I'd squat way too low because I feel I'm wasting a lot of energy hitting my bottom. Even though I use a nice stretch reflex at the bottom, I essentially use probably a good, say, 6 to 9 inches, if not more, say 12 inches of just like unnecessary load I have to push back up. Whereas if I can stop at just below hip height, I can save a lot more energy, and that's hitting the standards. But for me, when I look at my squat, I think I squat, and that's what I class as squat, like full range of motion. I'm not gaming the system. Whereas if I shorten my range, I'm still squatting. It's just I'm now essentially doing it a little bit differently. And that's when you're looking at standards, and it's like some people that just about flirt with the standard. As you say, this is where, if you're a judge and you're judging someone that's just about hitting depth, you have to ask, is like, if you're going to let them get away with a few of the reps, fine, and you're telling them, look, lower. So you're trying to coach them into getting lower and stuff like that, and then you might decide to start knocking reps off if they're not going consistently. But if you don't knock those reps off and they're doing shitty depth, then you're actually now someone else is doing full depth next to them, and then you're going, even that they're doing the same work, and that's where you got to think like, this is then where you start. People get really wound up. I just remember like people looking across like, oh, they're not doing it right. So you're like, get on with your workout. They're mid-workout and they're moaning about someone's depth or anything. And you're like, it brings out the ugly side of people, which is understandable because it is a competition. Whether it's against your mate or whether it's against the world, it's still a competition. And that's where I think it can. This is the horrible part of the Open, where because it goes, even though then people grab a beer afterwards and it'll be fine, and it'll joke about shitty depth squat over there. But do you know what I mean? It's still like in the moment, and you hope nothing's said that then causes a fracture in a relationship for a while.
Exactly. And this comes back to like, what's it for? Like, what's the Open for? If it's a serious competition for qualification purposes, then of course movement standards have to be adhered to, and any no reps should be called out. But if we go to the other side of the coin for the community, fully inclusive argument, and we just want everyone to get involved, have fun, have a good workout, get a training stimulus in whatever direction. If you've got a total newbie to CrossFit who's got terrible mobility and it's their first month of training CrossFit, and you're just no repping them because they can't hit depth and they literally can't score, then most people would agree that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
But,
but technically, if they are putting a score on the board, and also there isn't a true reflection of where they started. Because if you're giving them reps for, say, half rep squats, and then next year they do full rep squats and get half the reps, but they did it better, technically they are better. But then they did less, so then they actually think they did worse. But they don't have the same judge. You know what I mean? There's so much to it, and it's like, it is a fine line. And I think I do think there has to be you have to buy in with X amount of CrossFit experience to do the Open, and it shouldn't be for someone that's just joined it, because
there's a scaled option though, isn't there? Right?
No, so there is, but say using the depth is never a scale, right? Depth is a depth, right? It's a changed movement, but everyone should squat with the hips to parallel, right? And if someone's really struggling with that, and they've always struggled with it, whether they've been doing bodybuilding or whether they've been doing CrossFit or whatever, and do you know what I mean? And then even I know there've been people at the box where they've been doing the same depth squats for 3 years and they've never hit parallel. But they've every Open, they've done the same thing, and they've never broke parallel, and they've worn lifters, they've done everything to try and get themselves down there, but they can't. So then it's like, what do you do? Are you then going to judge that person on their fitness, not necessarily the movement standards? And then, but if he's competing alongside his mate or her mate, it's a really fine line that you are just. And this is the thing: when you're a judge and you've just done the workout, your head is in the sky. Like, you do not know. You're just about counting the reps and 12. And I, as a PT, I'll be completely clear-headed and I still miss rep. I still count things wrong. I'll be like, because I'm looking at the form.
Do one more. Do
one more. You'll be fine. One more. 5 more. That's it. But this is the thing, because I'm so... it's like I'm invested in watching what they're doing, not how many reps they're doing. So then, even if I'm counting them, I might say, 3 more. Like, no, I've done 10. I was like, do another 2 just so I can see. But you know what I mean? It's a funny one, because when you've just done the workout, you're not going to be thinking clearly. And I remember judging people after the workout, and it is hard. You're just about sitting there, like, eyes just about open, ticking off the reps. But
yeah, I think that it's a funny one, isn't it? I'm just visualizing 68-year-old Doris who's just turned up to the box and can't get past rep 1 because Coach Rob's just no repping her relentlessly.
Lower. I'll tell you something else as well.
She just can't.
No, and that's the thing. You talk about Doris, and it's like, just imagine, right? You've come to do CrossFit, and because you've heard it's this really inclusive, cool training methodology that gets you to do all sorts, and then you've come in, even if you've been doing it for say 6 weeks, right? And you're then being told to compete, and you're like, I don't want to compete. This is essentially like going into a Virgin Active, everyone doing bodybuilding, and saying, right, you got to step on stage in 6 weeks' time. You're like, sorry, what? Like, why? Why have I got to do that? And this is then where you're then forcing people to compete. Because if you don't do the Open, people are going to say, oh, why are you not doing the Open? Oh, I just don't really want to do it. But you're going to do the workout anyway. Why not sign up and do it? Oh, okay, because the box wants more people to be signing up. And even if it's like other members, like, CrossFitters, like, yes, do the Open. And it's like, but I've just joined. I've just done it for 6 weeks. Yeah, but it's inclusive. Everyone gets to do it. We all get to. It's like, I don't want to compete. You feel like you have to compete. And it's like, if you don't, you're the black sheep. And in that term, it's just like, you're like, oh, everyone's looking at me. And it's like, and it's funny because it's like, even though it's done not intentionally to be demeaning or outcasting or anything like that, it can do it like that because it is like, you could be training because you purely want to get healthier. You have no interest in beating anyone, except you just want to get better yourself. And if you know this workout may not be repeated, say, how do you know if it's where's the measure? So you're literally just doing the workout because everyone else is doing, which is part of CrossFit, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're spot on. The excuse me, the downside to competition is it can actually exclude or alienate people because they are intimidated by it, and it's not why they're there. They're not there, like you say, to beat anybody else. They're looking to just incrementally improve over time. And for that new person who's just joined CrossFit to then be pushed into doing something competitive and potentially get what they perceive to be a rubbish score can be very demoralizing. And I'm not saying there's not a way around that to manage it, to give them perspective and say, look, these people have been doing CrossFit for this long and they've done all this other training before. So of course they're going to score more highly than you. That still can be quite upsetting, especially for someone who thinks they're not in bad shape, to then be presented with a score saying you are 300,000th in the world out of 350,000. They're like, oh, fuck, I thought I was actually quite good. And that's something that's important to bear in mind, is that everyone who's doing the Open is probably in the top X% of people in the world fitness-wise. So even if you're the 95th percentile, you're still probably fitter than most people out there. It's just comparing yourself to other CrossFitters is the context. So that's quite hard to grasp, I think, because a lot of people in CrossFit, it's a big part of their life. So their frame of reference is quite distorted. Whereas in the grand scheme of things, if you're doing CrossFit at all, you are probably in the top, 5-10% of people in terms of fitness. By most measures.
So it's funny because on that exact point, it just made me think of my strength journey in general. And it's like, it's a massive ego hit. And I think, and if you're not content with saying, looking at others and going, oh, I want to be better. I'm looking to be stronger. I'm looking to be fitter. I'm looking to be a better version of myself. Then when you then compare yourself to all those other CrossFitters doing as well as they're like, fuck, why am I in the bottom third? I'm not doing well. I thought I was fit. And whereas in the box, I'm one of the fittest in the box, but it put me in the world or nothing. And it's this is exactly why I love the Open, is because if you're competitive in any way, it does put you on the big stage and say, right, this is where you are compared to everyone else doing CrossFit. And for me, so I've always been one of the strongest in the gyms that I've been at. So the Virgin Actives, at WIT, I've always been up there, either the strongest or very close to the strongest. I then go to Ronin the other week, a couple of weeks back. I'm essentially back at the bottom. I'm talking to one of the guys, squatting 300 for reps, deadlifting 300 something for reps. I'm like, oh, okay, so I've got a bit. Don't get me wrong. Again, I could then say, oh yeah, but he weighs more than me, or this. I'm like, but that's not the way I looked at it. I was like, I love this because I'm now chasing to be better. I'm looking at ways, okay, how can I improve to get closer to that? Because that's inspiring to me, seeing that there's other people better than me. I know there's people better than me in the world. But I've never been in company of that. But then as soon as you put yourself in company of that, you're like, okay, I now can push. And the CrossFit Open does that because it puts you on blast. It puts you out there. So, right, how good are you really? And so then you might beat everyone in the odd workout here and there, but can you beat them across a 3-week competition in the world, whether it's against your mate in the box or whatever? And yeah, I know we were kind of talking about some of the bad stuff, but it's the kind of the ups and the downs of it, because a lot of this is, as we said at the start, is very opinionated. It's what just you think of it, and it's like how you interpret the CrossFit Open is how you're gonna experience it. And like for me, when I said about then going to Ronin, it's like if I went there, saw how much stronger all these people are, like either lighter than me or heavier than me, or whatever, and all hitting these massive numbers, and I'm like, oh, this is shit. I'm gonna go back to say here where I'm gonna be the strongest. It's like you just put yourself in this corner to make yourself feel good, rather than the whole thing of training and being stronger, fitter, all these things, is to be looking to get better. So then comparison, which is then a bit of a negative because you start comparing yourself to other people, can be a bad thing. But then if you use that comparison as a fuel to be a better you, it can then turn you to better. So again, it's the seesaw, right?
Exactly. It's all just it's all just perspective. I think.
Yeah.
How do you relate to that information, and what meaning do you attribute to it? Because it's just totally an opinion rather than a fact. Let's come back to what might not be so good about the CrossFit Open. One thing that I think makes a lot of coaches inside and outside of CrossFit squirm is people doing workouts that they don't have the right to do.
Yeah.
And
this one's going to be a really good example of that.
RX is aspirational for most people. They want to just do the Open RX is a very common goal for CrossFitters. However, some people shouldn't and aren't ready for it. So 22.2 is a great example of this for people who may have a 1 rep max deadlift of in and around 100 kilos on the male side of things, to then do 100 kilos for up to 100 reps in 10 minutes under fatigue is not a good idea for them. But in their head, because they can deadlift 100 kilos, they think that that's definitely the right option for them. And I think it takes a lot of humility to opt out of that because, it always comes back to why you're doing the Open and what does it mean for you. If you're turning up and it's your workout on a Friday and you want to actually get a workout, there's no point doing, 500 kilo deadlifts with 5 burpees and then looking at the bar and failing reps for another 8 minutes. That's not making you fitter and stronger. Whereas if you did the scaled version and you might finish the workout, you get a really strong stimulus in that direction, you're probably leaving the gym stimulated to become a little bit fitter and stronger. And it's always been a difficult conversation for coaches to talk to people, talking them out of doing RX when they potentially could, because they would just spend a lot of the workout trying and failing the muscle up, trying and failing double unders, trying and failing. And knowing who's right to push, to say, go on, give it a go. Like, I think this is the day you get your first muscle up, versus hold back and say, I think for you today, this is a better decision. Maybe next year we'll push for RX.
This is that ego thing, as I said there, because this is if you done, say for instance, using the first 2 workouts and you've RX them to then scale the 3rd workout, you're like, what? Why do I have? No, I can't. And you're like, all right, I can do pull-ups, I can do double unders, I can do 40 kilo thrusters, I can just about do chest to bar, I can just about do double unders, I can do 50 kilo thrusters, or 15 bar muscle up. So you're like, okay, I've got 2. I've done 1 and I've done another one after that. Can I do that 15 times? And you're like, and like the amount of chicken wings and if you imagine, but the thing is we've touched on it in previous episodes where we said like getting your first muscle up in the Open is a good and a bad. It's like, it doesn't mean you can do muscle ups now. It means you got above the rings or the bar in one movement, right? Whether that was pretty or ugly, it doesn't matter. It's a moment to celebrate, and everyone, it's a really great moment when you see someone get their first muscle up. Normally in an Open workout, it's amazing. But then to repeat that for 14 more times, and you're like, is this really going to be good? And then they get annoyed at themselves that they've done 1 and they can't do it again, even though that was their first muscle up. They're like, and especially with a bar muscle up, I don't know about you, but I find ring muscle ups for me were easier because they allowed me to get, even though there's the stability portion of it, I was able to get in between the rings easier compared to a bar, which I had to, the timing has to be so much better to get over that bar. Otherwise, for me anyway, the feet were too far forward, or swinging. There was too much that would go wrong, and that's why I think I learned bar muscle ups after ring muscle ups. Now, I think when it comes to this type of workout, and you have to tell yourself, I'm going to have to scale this down to then the scaling option, which I can't remember what it was. It'd probably be like jumping bar muscle ups and jumping pull ups. I haven't seen it, but the thing what you said about the coaches having to then try and essentially get someone to step off the ledge of the RX and step down into scale is a challenge, because you're testing someone's ego. And as you say, if they're not 100% clear on why they're doing the workout and they just want to do it because they know they can do the first half of workout. But to be fair, right, if someone thinks I can do the first half workout, it's going to take me 12 minutes to get there, and I might, or maybe 11 minutes, and I have like a minute to try and do one by muscle up, then it's a good workout. Then technically, it might, even though the intent of this workout is to be able to push and get to the end of the workout in 12 minutes, that's kind of the intent of it. So you choose the appropriate weight to get you to the end of the workout in that time frame. And this is then where, obviously, when you're looking at RX and scaling, it's like, am I able to get there? Because that's the goal of this workout, which is, like when there's been previous workouts and it was like, and it was all the way to, say, the ring muscle up, and it's like, okay, people standing underneath the rings for like 10 minutes because it was a second movement. You're like, this isn't a good workout. Just because you're then above someone on the leaderboard because you've done one muscle up, you're like, but that's not a workout. And then they say, I'll do the scaled workout later. You're like, no, like that. But that's the ego,
that comes
right?
back to it comes back to why you're doing it, right? If you're doing it to rank more highly than your mates, or to place as highly as you can on the leaderboards, then you would do that. You would just go as far as you can, even if there is no training stimulus from the workout. However, if you're not there to rank as highly as possible, then doing the scaled option and working really hard for the time cap is probably going to get you a better fitness stimulus, and you'll leave the gym feeling like you've done some work. But there have been a few workouts like that over the years where people just end up getting to a point in a very short space of time to then look at the bar, or that they can't, that's too heavy for them to lift, or look at the gymnastics bar to try and do a muscle up they can't do. And that's, I think historically that would be viewed as, look, you're getting a very clear signal of what you need to work on. But is that something that's really important to them? That presumes that everyone's goals are to be as good at the sport of CrossFit as possible. Whereas if it is that general fitness that people want, why do they care about doing a kipping ring muscle up? They just want to live a little bit longer and have a better quality of life. So it all comes back to that, really, is just to who you are and why you're doing the Open in the first place, as to how you approach those problems. But I think, we've done that one on people RXing when maybe they shouldn't. I think that's, the summary there. What else have we got? We've got moaning about programming. We've talked about risky programming, I think, is a slight nuance on that. So 22.2 is probably the most recent example of this. Is doing 100 deadlifts and 100 burpees in 10 minutes good for a lot of people? I actually was surprised. Maybe I'm just not plugged into the social networks as much as I should be, but I'm surprised at the lack of fallout after that. I would be expecting a lot of people to be having back spasms, a few slip discs for good measure, but I actually haven't heard of any major fallout from 22.2. So
I've seen some funny fails, though. I have seen some funny fails, and it's just like the dramatization of just like finishing the workout, which is always the way, and just like people just doing deadlifts, which you're looking at them, you're like, they're craning it up, and you're just like, oh God. And do you know what? It's like, it's funny because I think we both had the same thought when we saw that workout, and you haven't seen the fallout, and whether that's because it was an ascending pyramid and because it was such a short time frame that most people didn't actually get to the 100. They only got to halfway, or something like that. So then it's only like 50 deadlifts, which then isn't bad
Mm.
at all. So maybe it's because of that. Because I saw a lot of people kind of get into like the rounds of like, say, 5 on the way back down. So like that sort of range, which is you're basically there. But
Mm.
so if that's where some of the good people I saw that, not necessarily quarterfinal good, but they're good CrossFitters are getting towards, say, the fives, most people maybe got to the tens or maybe the nines. They might have tried to get
Yeah.
back down, and technically that's probably not that bad. And with the burpees, they were probably so slow in the burpees because, again, they'll get you. Like, by
Hmm.
the time you get to 50 burpees, right, you're going to be slow. Like, that's
Yeah.
it. Bar facing burpees as well is like, there's quite a big
Work.
movement standard. It's like, it takes a long time to get back to the bar for most people. So I think that might have been why the fallout might not have been as bad, because people probably didn't get as far as 100 reps. And only the
Mm.
people that could sustain 100 deadlifts got to the 100 deadlifts, and they're conditioned for that. So they could know
Yeah.
they could get there. So I think that's where, if you look at the workout as a separator into the people that should be doing 100 kilo deadlift for reps, this was an easy workout for them. And I
Yeah.
think, and when you said like someone has to weigh up, am I going to do an RX and I've got 120 kilo deadlift as a 1RM? Am I going to do 100 kilos 100 times potentially? You say, well, you might only get there 50 times. But if you want to do 100 deadlifts, but to be fair, even 100 deadlifts at any weight, it's 100 deadlifts. Like even at 60 kilos, that's going to give you a back pump. Not necessarily a bad back pump, but it's definitely going to give you a back pump.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think the principle here is basically putting people into situations where you're asking them to do high skill or heavy movements under fatigue. It's kind of like a overall CrossFit challenge.
Yeah.
Is that a good idea? Like, why are we doing this in the first place? If we're doing it to test people in the sport of CrossFit, then yes, obviously that's something that's good to do. But if we're doing an inclusive fitness competition for everyday athletes who have varying levels of CrossFit experience, and we're chucking them in, asking them to do, heavy or high skill movements under fatigue, there is an elevated level of risk here. And this is actually something I think is great about the new setup of going open into quarterfinals, because you get that separation. You take people out of the quarterfinals, and then you give that natural filtering to say only people who are of a certain fitness level are going to be tested in this way, doing the heavy lifts
Yeah.
under fatigue. And I think in previous years where there was that front squat, dumbbell front squat and burpee ladder going into 1 rep max clean,
That's my
and I
favourite. I
injured
love
myself in that one.
that.
I injured myself in that, where you're just blowing out your ass, your legs are fried, and then you're asked to max out your clean. And if you haven't been doing that,
Yeah.
then it's a high risk situation, right? You're
Massively, yeah.
literally doing a high skill movement as heavy as you possibly can after a huge chunk of fatigue. And I think quite rightly, people ask the question, like, is this a good idea for most people to be doing, considering we've got hundreds of thousands of people around the world doing the CrossFit Open? What percentage of those people should really be doing that? Is that a good idea for them? Whereas obviously the elites and the people looking to fly up the leaderboard, they can do whatever they want. It's a sport. All sports carry risks. But come back to Doris, like, why does Doris need to max out her clean after doing her dumbbell front squats and burpees? She just doesn't. I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't
No.
think many people think that's a good idea. So I
But Doris
think
might want to know what a 1 rep max clean is,
under fatigue, she's
Yeah.
desperate to know. So I think just having the presence of mind to challenge whether or not specific workouts are appropriate for specific people needs to happen, because at the end of the day, you can't program something that perfectly fits
No.
300 plus thousand people, and the burden of responsibility should lie on the individual and then the coach to help advise the individual. But at the end of the day, it's your own body,
Yeah.
and you've got to
Do what
make
you
your own
want.
decisions on how you use it. But I think the guidance around it could be better for saying, in this workout, these are the things you should be thinking about. Like in that deadlift workout, what's your 1 rep max? Like, how much fitness have you been doing? Let's make a sensible decision here. And that's about all I've got
Yeah,
to say on
I
that.
guess it could be then it wouldn't happen because then people would be gaming it. But like this, you should have, if you're not doing say the RX option, you should have a percentage of your 1 rep max. So it should be like, say for instance, you do this workout 50% of your 1 rep max, because most people that say they're aiming this workout to probably say has, like I say, 180, 200 kilos deadlift for one, and this is say 50 reps or 100, 50% for 100 reps, and like that could be a way that you could say scale the workout rather than giving them a prescribed scaling weight, which still might be too heavy for someone. But if you got the intent behind the workout, and this is what all of this comes down to, and this is why I think we could probably summarize this all now, and it is just overall we both say how much of a good thing this is. Like it overall, it just brings so many good things. It's just when there's not a clear definition of what the open is for someone coming into CrossFit that maybe hasn't been indoctrinated into the CrossFit way of life, that they've just heard it's this workout that gets done every Friday for a couple of weeks of the year, and it's just like this whole big hoo-ha, and they're like, they just don't know what it's about. And it'd be really good if maybe CrossFit did a bit of a better way to really help, or maybe the box that you join, maybe like a couple of weeks prior to the open, the open's coming up, this is what it is, this is why we do it. I don't know if all the boxes do it, they might do, but it's definitely something you want to do. And like, especially if you do offer foundations, explain what happens within CrossFit, the calendar and stuff like that, because it gives people an idea, maybe something to look forward to. And I think if the scaling options of workouts were then more personalized, I think would be a lot better. Because even when you've got, say, something like when there was handstand push-ups and people doing handstand push-ups off a box, right? They're still being upside down. They're still not really, they're probably not ready. They might be, say, hand release push-ups, so you'll go down the scale. That obviously is then going to be put to the coach, and that coach should be able to say in the class, right, these are the options. And if you can't do those, you probably go up to that person individually and say, maybe do hand release push-ups. But then they don't feel that they're part of the open, because they're not on their paper. It isn't the scale for handstand push-ups. You know what I mean? And it's a really tough job. They do it well. They really do. And I think we've both agreed that it is a great thing overall. But I think if you want to do as well as you can, you do have to take a lot more ownership of what you should be doing. And maybe this isn't the year for you to do at RX. This next year.
Yeah, I think my take on all that is that net overall, it's a brilliant thing, and I think it's great. It's almost like, I was trying to think of a good analogy earlier for it. It's like, I think the London Marathon is brilliant, and I really support it, and I think that loads of people doing it is great. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to do it, and it doesn't mean that everyone who's doing it should be doing it, but it's still a brilliant thing that it happens every year. I think in terms of the CrossFit Open, it serves lots of great purposes, and I don't think it needs to change in its current format. I actually think it's brilliant as it is. The thing that could be better is the messaging around how to approach it, just to give confused individuals a clearer approach for
intention behind what they're doing. Exactly. And I think what you just said there about the marathon was a really good example, because like when I said about going into like a Virgin Active or a Fitness First, saying, right, you're going to compete in a bodybuilding show, you're not going to do that. And the problem is within a CrossFit box, because the box is doing the open, you get dragged into it. And I think that's what's the hard part, because it's like, you want to be part of this community. You don't want to be on the outskirts. You want to be joining in because everyone's having fun on this Friday. Yeah. And it's a really tough place to be, because you're not forcing people to do the London Marathon. If you want to apply for it and you want to train for it, or you just want to turn up and do it, then apply for it and go for it. But that's your choice. Like, you're not being told you need to apply for it, you need to do it. Whereas when you're in a CrossFit box, you're kind of being told, like, to some degree, you were doing the open.
Everyone should do it.
It's like,
I think there are some differences. Like, this is why I don't think it's the perfect analogy. Maybe you could make it be a little bit more like if you joined a running club and everyone at the running club was doing the marathon, and you hadn't done your prep phase for it. But I'm sure playing devil's advocate now, the counter arguments are that you can scale it and we can adjust it, and there's every movement's infinitely scalable, which is true.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is it's a lot harder to do that in practice with all the excitement, with all the buzz, and it takes a very strong coach and a very humble athlete to have the right scaling option applied. It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but I think from my experience and having seen a lot of people bite off more than they can chew, let's say, that's sort of how I see it.
Yeah, and I guess it's understanding your why, right? Which is something we always say on this podcast, and understanding why you're going in to do that workout of the day. If it is to have some fun, then crack on, do your thing. If you're looking to be competitive, then make sure you're training to be competitive. Make sure all your CrossFit classes that are leading up to the Open are competitive. You're thinking about, right, am I covering all my bases? Is the box doing everything I need to prepare me for the CrossFit Open? And if not, cool, what can I do outside of that to make sure I'm filling all my gaps in my own personal weaknesses? So it all boils down to the individual, right? And it's not a boring message because it has to constantly be re-said, but as well, if you're in a class, listen to the coach. Like, I really do. Like, it's sometimes hard to hear that you need to scale a workout, but normally the coach will be trying to push you as hard as you possibly can. So if you can do an RX workout, he or she will probably say to you, do it RX, because he say, right, you're probably going to, like in this workout, an example, right? You might have chest bars, you don't have bar muscle ups. You say, right, you'll probably get to around the bar muscle ups towards the end of the workout anyway. Why not crack on? You get a good workout because you're going to be doing heavy barbells. You're going to be doing a good workout. So you're going to get to the bar muscle ups and say 2 minutes left. But if you can barely do a chest to bar pull up, you're stopping at like the first proper hurdle. And that's then where the coach should be saying, maybe do the scaling workout, because chest to bar will be your final hurdle that you need to hit rather than bar muscle ups. So then that's where you have to start weighing those things up. And most coaches, if they're any good, will have a good idea of where to set you if you're unsure. And if you're not sure and you just want to do what you want, then do what you want and crack on. And if you get hurt, don't blame the coach.
There you go. Right, should we leave it there?
I think we should. I think we've had quite a balanced conversation there. I think we've overall been a real net positive. And if you did enjoy the Open, we would love to hear how you got on. And if you've got any other thoughts to do with the CrossFit Open, if you just think it's a bunch of silly workouts for 3 weeks and you can't wait for them to be over, we'd love to hear that. And if you are Mr. or Mrs. CrossFit, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what you think of this current structure and maybe how they're going to progress or how they're going to change it in the future. Because since this is the first one under the new owner and a new potential direction of CrossFit, I do wonder where this is going to change. But, as always, if you did enjoy today's episode, please do share it and tag us on Instagram at lunge.lift. Also head over to YouTube. Subscribe, check us out, watch this video, see us, and give us a review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review there, or on Spotify, you can give us a cheeky 5 stars. It literally takes 2 seconds. Just literally, there's a star button at the top. Press that. 5, sweet. And if you don't want to give a 5, maybe just forget the star button and just leave it for the time being. I prefer to keep it like that. But thank you very much for your time. We hope you have enjoyed today's unbiased conversation on the CrossFit Open. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.